Ready? We are? Okay. Meeting come to order. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Calling of the roll, please.
Councilman Mann.
Here.
Councilwoman Weger.
Here.
Councilman Loudermilk.
Here.
Councilman Thompson.
Here.
Councilman Schweitzer.
Here.
Councilwoman Spence-Bennett. Here. Councilman Morris.
Here. Okay. All right. We've got our journal in front of us. Are there any corrections of that preceding meeting?
Mr. President,
Yes.
I make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
We have a motion. Do we, Mr. Loudermilk, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Weger. All right, roll call vote, please.
Councilman Mann.
Aye.
Councilwoman Weger.
Aye.
Councilman Loudermilk.
Aye.
Councilman Thompson.
Aye.
Councilman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Councilwoman Spence-Bennett.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye. All right. Minutes approved. Okay. Now, we have public comment, and we have communication from elected officials or agencies. So I have a question here. County engineer, is your presentation, what do you think? How long? Well, I just thought we have all these other officials. We have quite a bit of ground to cover, questions and what have you, that might take you out of order and have you present. Does that sound all right with the council? Okay. All right, thank you. Yes.
So about 9 months ago or so, I'm sorry, Larry Robbins, County Engineer, Highway Director, Mr. President, members of the council, I appreciate you having me here. About 9 months ago, you approved a combination of the engineering and highway departments as well as the creation of the GIS department. Since that time, we've been working pretty hard on trying to develop some things, some tools that will make the county be more productive, effective, and efficient. It's still a work in progress, but I'd like to take a few minutes just to kind of show you guys where we are, give you a snapshot where we are today, and kind of what we're thinking about where we're going in the future. So, a few of the accomplishments we have done there. We've updated a road mileage in the inventory for the entire county. There was some discrepancy on the number of total miles, lane miles that we had, and how that affected our MVH distribution and so forth. So we did update that road mileage and inventory. We're currently working with the state on getting that certified to get that back under control. We do have 815 miles of certified roadway. We did rate all 815 miles of roadway here in about the last month, and that is part of our asset management plan to be eligible for community crossings. Previously, that was done by a consultant in 2016 for around $70,000, and again in 2018 it was updated for around $40,000. So with the creation of the department and everything, that's a significant savings that the county can see. So to do that, we purchased some iPads for the guys. We got about 7 that we purchased right now, with potential of doing some more, so they can go out and do some data collection. This is a collector app that I'd like to run through with you real quick. The first map you're gonna see is the road rating, the road inventory map. All of those roads are gonna look gray. The ones that are in red, if you zoom in here, those are the ones that are not rated. When you go to rate, that particular road there is Tucker Drive. That is something that has not been turned over from the state yet with the 641 process, so we haven't got a rating for that. But when you go into this, you can select this road segment. It'll highlight the whole segment there. You can go in and you can edit down at the bottom, put in all the information for that roadway, pavement type, obviously not concrete, it's HMA. You can put any comments in there that you need to put in. You can put in that way. You can assign it a pacer value. Once you assign it a value, that road will then no longer be red. So the road's in pretty good shape that I know off the top of my head, so I'm just gonna rate it a 9. Any issues with the pavement, if it had a patch or a pothole or something that you needed to take care of, you could put that comment in there as well. And then there's a recommended treatment we put in here for 2020. When we do this again, we'll probably try to do this every year rather than every other year, so we can make sure that we stay on top of some of our road conditions. So this is a drop down, has all kinds of different treatment options that we can do for the pavements. You see it on there: crack seal, fog seal, dust control, microsurface, mill overlay, various thicknesses. These are all drop downs that came from LTAP and the data management system. So the format that we have it built in now, it can be plugged right into their format, so we don't have to make any modifications or anything to it. We fill out the Excel spreadsheet, send it in, and we get certified. So should be relatively quickly. So if you had to have a photo, you could also add a photo to the roadway, put it on there, use that photo. Now it's a part of that file now, so it's on there. So if you have some issue with the road, you could take a picture of it in there. So then once you're completed with that, you just add the point, submit it, and then it is completed. So now when you go out, oops, sorry, I went too far. Now when you go out, that road is now shaded. Now instead of red, it is gray. So anything that was rated. So that was something we could do to keep our guys focused on what they did rate, what they can keep track of. So once it is, you can assign a different number. Now after that data is entered, we can query that information out of a spreadsheet. So if we wanted to see all the roads that were recommended to have crack seal treatment, we can bring them all up. If we want to see all the roads that need to be overlaid or have patches, patchwork done to them or anything like that. So that's just something that's going to be a useful tool to keep us focused and hopefully a little more efficient in the jobs and be better stewards of our money. We also work with the auditor's office, creating new property record cards and updating parcel splits for the auditor's office. That was an assignment for when we created the GIS department, make sure we had that support for the auditor's office. We are coordinating with the sheriff's office for the data sharing. They're working on some things, I think, community-wide that could be very beneficial. And our coordination efforts are going to be, twofold. We'll go back and forth with that data information. A lot of that has to do with speed data, as well as passing zones and things like that, stop controlled intersections, all that. We also maintain the zoning map for the area planning right now. And about the end of September, we became a member of the 811 utility agreement. So what that does for us is that protects us from any utilities being damaged in the roadway. We have a lot of assets out there, from bridges to culverts to the roadway itself, and we need to know when people are working in our roadway and our right-of-way, and this will absolutely allow us to do that. It's a cost of about $6,000 a year. I feel it was well justified. If we save one culvert or one structure damage, then we've paid for itself. Not to mention some of the fees, the right-of-way fees we will, get that people slipping through the cracks or us not catching them. So the last thing I'd like to take on that we've kind of accomplished this year is a drainage collector app. That was one of the things that we highlighted when we came to you back in early spring, late winter, about the need to have a way to keep track of our drainage complaints and our problems in our community. So this layer of this map, so this allows us to create a point anywhere, rate that, and be able to keep track of that data. So here I'm just going to show you, this is a point that we have. We're going to do some work on Eaton and Blue Ridge down there. We had a complaint about a drainage aspect there. So I'll go into edit. I'll kind of show you what this is. So, gentleman complained, had some water standing on his block. We did some work in the past, maybe not really accomplished kind of what we were wanting to do. So he had some pictures. So I went down and rated the problem. It was a 2079 Blue Ridge. You add complaints in there. He said the drain clogs frequently, threatens his foundation. You can rate it. Now it's a drop down as well as the other one, as the road rating was. You go 1 is immediate high risk, 2 is a medium risk quick response, 3 is a regular risk scheduled maintenance, 4 is low priority low risk when assets are available, and 5 is no action required. So if somebody calls it, says there's water in the ditch, well, it's supposed to be there, it's not really anything we can do about it, then it's just rated a 5. So what this is able to do, we can track these in, and then we can query that information by 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, or 5s. So then we can help focus on those ones that are going to be more dangerous or impeding the public. So once that's rated, it's put in there. It has a drainage type. It's also a drop down, whether it's a ditch, culvert, bridge, storm sewer, drywall, inlet. And then you put some comments in there, anything you want to put in there. So you can also attach a cost estimate in a water body. If it was a discharge into Honey Creek or somewhere else, then you could trace that if you needed to. So if you wanted all the drainage problems that were in a particular watershed, you could query that as well. The photos, if I can get them to load here. So this is a photo that he emailed me and submitted to me. So you can see kind of the standing water there, kind of depicts the problem pretty well. So we have that capability, just saving it on the iPad, transferring it straight in. So that's something we should be able to keep track of in the future. So that's just a quick version of it, a quick run through. I don't want to take up too much of your time with that. But if you have any questions about it, we can talk about that later. But things we're going to be working on in the future. Right now, we're working on snow routes and areas. It's been a hot topic now since we're approaching the winter season. Who knows what the rest of 2020 is going to bring us. But I would like to be able to publish a map for the county, for the citizens to be able to see what roads are going to be plowed, when, and what priority. And that way, it gives them a little understanding too. If they have an understanding that they know, hey, my subdivision's not going to get plowed, before the main road gets plowed, then they can kind of have that as they go on. So, they won't be calling me and saying, hey, when are you going to plow my subdivision? That, after the roads, after the main road's plowed, then maybe they'll call me. But the other thing we're working on in other departments, so we're establishing a layer for the surveyor's office. We're working so they can have their monuments, their points, their stones, everything on an iPad device right out there in the field. These are relatively inexpensive. They're a very useful tool for us. Like I said, the data collection that we did for the road ratings, my guys were able to complete that in less than a month. And something that would cost the county a significant amount of money in the past is something we can accomplish fairly easily now. The other thing was going to coordinate with the other offices, health department, whether it be septic fields or inspections, building inspection, obviously their inspections and keeping track of some of those. The assessor and the parks office as well. So those are all things that we want to incorporate and move forward in the future. But that's really just a quick version of where we're at now. And if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Mr. Robbins, can the council in the future expect to see reports from yours to justify or to back up?
Absolutely. I haven't got it done yet, but with the road ratings, I wanted to have a report to see where we're going, to make sure we're tracking in the right direction. So yeah, absolutely. I can provide the council with reports on whether it be average road rating or the road miles that we paved, or really what the dollars are being spent on.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Any other questions, county engineer?
Appreciate your
Well,
time.
I'm tickled. Looks like you've shrunk the county down.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on then to the public comment section, and we have the program. Who wants to lead off here for presentation of this program for the grant and matching money for it and what we're going to do with it and that kind of thing? Commissioner, are you the lead man? Okay, thank you.
Okay. I have a few comments, and then I'll hand it over. Is that okay, sir? All right. So, good evening, President Morris and members of the council. I am Rachel Leslie with RGL Solutions, and for tonight's purposes, I'm standing here with County Commissioner Brendan Kearns, the Vigo County School Corporation, Joint as our partner, as well as members of our state officials, which include Senator John Ford and Representative Tanya Path. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you this evening. I'm pleased to stand here to discuss a unique broadband expansion opportunity for the students of Vigo County. The recent months reminded us of the importance of connectivity and the responsibility we have as citizens and leaders to present access to all, and especially the children and students in our community. Although broadband has been on the minds of our local, state, and federal leaders for purposes of quality of life, economic development, telehealth, and education for some time, I think it's fair to say that an exclamation point is now over the word education. Although others will add to this discussion this evening, I would like to acknowledge the collaborative framework of the Commissioner's request that will be before you this evening. Recently, the Vigo County School Corporation received $1.4 million through a GEARS grant funded through the Governor's Office to expand access and connectivity to the students of Vigo County by identifying 244 community access locations where joint fiber would be terminated on school corporation equipment. The Vigo County project was one of the highest funded projects in the state of Indiana, a huge win not only for our students, but our entire county. Although we're grateful to be one of the highest funded projects, the construction costs required to create the most comprehensive strategy possible provided the best outcome to all Vigo County taxpayers requires some additional funds. I would also like to add, even though he will be humble, that Joint recently received an additional nearly $2 million in state grant funds for broadband, bringing the project cost down even more. Therefore, the project has focused in on 84 key connectivity points across the city of Terre Haute and Vigo County that the Vigo County School Corporation believes provides safe zones for children and families to visit, get online, and enjoy school corporation access. I should note this project would also allow the other 4 higher education institutions in our community the same access if they so desired. To our knowledge, there is no other community looking at this type of comprehensive approach in collaboration with their city, their county, school corporation, higher education institutions, and its local provider. This approach, utilizing local, state, and private dollars, would position Vigo County in a unique driver's seat for future broadband grants and overall infrastructure for more and enhanced connectivity. With commitments from the City of Terre Haute, Vigo County, the Vigo County School Corporation, and Joint, the collaborative outcome could create immediate results for the students and citizens of Vigo County. Although we also always knew broadband deserts existed, as mentioned before earlier, COVID-19 drew new attention to the connectivity concerns impacting households in Vigo County. In the survey, 5,212 responses taken over the summer as part of the Vigo County School Corporation GEARS grant application, it was learned that nearly half of respondents indicated that their service was not fast enough nor reliable enough for distance learning, and 14% of those students did not have access at all. The Vigo County Commissioners request the Vigo County Council this evening, I know Commissioner Brennan will refer to that particular request, but this combined with the city's commitment, Joint's connectivity already presented at all of the Vigo County schools, and the grant dollars will provide much needed access to broadband for the citizens and students of Vigo County. I want to acknowledge one more time and thank Superintendent Hayworth for his leadership and vision, Josh Warner with Joint for his expertise, and Senator Ford and Representative Tanya Path for attending and support this evening and their work at the state level regarding such projects such as this. Mayor Duke Bennett and all 3 of the Vigo County Commissioners for their dedication to this initiative. And I would especially like to thank Commissioner Kearns for his understanding on this topic. So Commissioner Kearns, thank you. And with your permission, sir, Commissioner Kearns.
Rachel's just done a great job covering everything. And, sitting back there, I'm trying to think of what would be poignant and wonderful to say to sell everybody on this idea. But when you get down to it, it's about what we're supposed to do. We're elected by the people to do good things for the community, to use the tax dollars to, of course, pay for services like what Larry showed, make sure that the roads, the things that we take for granted, school buses, being able to get in subdivisions, pick up our children safely, those are expectations. We have money. We have approximately $9 million sitting in account economic development money. Since I've been in public office, and since many of you have been in public office, none of us can really say that we spent that money on true initiatives to make us a step above. This is a massive project. This is an opportunity for us to provide infrastructure to everybody in the county, regardless of their ability to pay. There are people that live out in rural areas that private internet companies would never run a line to their house for $30 a month. It costs hundreds of thousands of dollars per mile to run fiber. By us investing in our community, we're doing so many things. COVID, it's a horrible thing we're going through. But those of us that have kids, and I look at this differently because I have a second grader. Most of you have kids that are in school too, or did. When the schools had to lock down, and thank you, Rob, for everything you've done to keep our kids safe and continue to do so, a lot of those kids that don't have internet access, their education stops. The ones that live in the far rural areas, they don't have those pipelines going to their houses. If they have a satellite system or a cellular system, the service is sketchy at best. It's just not going to work. We're looking at $3 million. $3 million is a lot of money to us individually. Collectively, government-wise, it's a drop in the bucket. By us making this investment, we're going to make Vigo County more attractive to companies, more attractive to people that, let's say, work in Edgar County. They're going to want to live in Vigo because they have high-speed internet access. Professionals like yourselves may have to work at home. This is going to provide avenues for that. You're seeing how people are leaving big cities and they're going to rural areas to work because COVID has brought a new light to them. They see that there is life outside of heavy traffic and hanging out in high-rise buildings. They're going to the hills, which is something we don't have. But we need high-speed internet access. A lot of times when we build government structures, we have plaques on the corner of the buildings. It notes who the commissioners were. It notes who the council members were, the architects, the engineers. We're doing a big project right now, and it's a jail. We're spending $100 million plus or minus on a facility to incarcerate people. There will be a plaque on that jail with their names on it. I think for $3 million, I'd much rather see us have a plaque on a project of this magnitude, something that we've done to improve the infrastructure in this county for all citizens. And that's just how I'm looking at this. When the school corporation and Rachel brought this to our attention, to me it was a no-brainer. Josh Werner, he is the man in this state. This is the guy that everybody looks to as far as broadband advice goes. He lives right here in Terre Haute. We're looking at partnering with a company that's here in Terre Haute that invests in employees that live here. I mean, I don't know how else to sell this. But I think it's something that is worth moving forward with because as elected officials, it's almost an expectation of us to invest in our community and our citizens. So I don't know what else to add. I think I'll just stop if you guys have any questions. We have some experts here that are here to help answer and support.
Okay. You have joint represented here, you have school corporation represented here, you have state representatives, you have the RJL people here that have knitted together some of these different people. Questions, council people? Yeah. Chris, go ahead.
When does this have to happen? I mean,
You want me to go ahead? So a lot of the money's already come in. They've worked so hard on getting grants. A lot of this project's going to move forward regardless. But there's an advantage of us doing it right now. If we can tie in to what Joink is doing, it makes the job so much easier. Ideally, I'd like to see us have the funds with the ability to move into Joink's hands by the end of this calendar year. It's that important. When you look at, or first of all, you can do it quickly. You can have this done within 6-7 months. So maybe within a year, we can have the county taken care of. But timing is of the essence. COVID's not going away. There's a possibility that we could be shut down again soon, and we're going to need that internet access. We have buses driving around, parking with mobile Wi-Fi spots for when the next situation happens. Councilman Schweitzer, I think if we could do this now, it'll just help move the community forward.
So this would require a special meeting in December?
Or you could do it tonight. Okay, with the changing of the rules, you cannot.
We can't do it.
No.
This would be the first hearing?
Shows you what I recall from being on the council. Yeah. So 14 days, 15 days from. Yeah.
And then we could suspend the rules in that meeting and take action? Yeah. Okay, nothing further.
Lisa, you had a question?
Yes, could you say a little bit more? I think y'all certainly mentioned this. Ms. Leslie, I think y'all had a little bit more data on the impact to people who perhaps don't have financial resources from your survey data. Could you say a few more words about who this will benefit in the county?
I can. I will tell you that Joink has done an exceptional job over a period of time discovering where these deserts are, and the demographics follow those deserts. So this has been a very intentional layout of where these particular locations would go based on economic status and demographics. So it's been, I'll use the word intentional, Councilwoman, on how we've chosen these locations. Joink has significant data outside of just the 5,000 and some respondents that we received.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know many of you had the chance to talk with Rachel or Representative RJL about this project. One of the targets right off the bat would be hitting all the firehouses. So that way, firehouses in the rural areas are community centers. If we can get the broadband directly to there, we can get a Wi-Fi transmitter that can do basically an umbrella signal. So if people needed to pull up to the building, if they can't get in, then they'd be able to use the Wi-Fi in the parking lot. So that's one thing that I failed to mention earlier. We've been working with Vicki Oster, our 911 director, about the possibility of using broadband as a backup system in case the radios fail. So we're looking at how we can employ that technology. But first, we have to get the broadband to the firehouses, and there's about 18 firehouses that we'd be looking at.
Okay, and one final question. I know it's November and we're getting into winter weather and that sort of thing, as you mentioned. But to sort of expand on Councilman Schweitzer's question, I know it'll take a while to do the whole thing. How quickly might residents in Vigo County start to see some of these things go live?
It's Josh Zerner with Joink. It's conceivable that we would be beginning engineering right away. So just as a result of those efforts, there would be indication that we're working in the areas. In terms of actually putting construction equipment in, I think some of that could be late December, but in earnest in January, depending on the weather.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
The average life of this pipeline should be about 30 years too. So this is not something that, we're looking at a 5-year program. We're looking at a pipeline for about 30 years. Because as we all know, technology will change by then. And this will probably be obsolete by that point, but it's a good system that Joink is installing.
Mr. Mann?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Superintendent Hayward, if we could ask for what was identified within the school corporation that brought about this request. How did the process go to involve the state of Indiana to get the grant money? And what is the ultimate goal for any Vigo County School Corporation student. If we understand that there's already X number of dollars. So what do these additional dollars do for any Vigo County School Corporation student, if you would, please?
Thank you for that question. Our supper tables are now our classrooms. Our couches are our classrooms. School buses are now our classrooms. When we started to write the grant, we were probably a little selfish. We were thinking devices. We were thinking about what was in the child's hands. And then in April, with our state officials, we were on a conference call, not just with Vigo County, but with other superintendents in West Central Indiana. And our discussion moved quickly from devices to our ability to have broadband and access. So when we authored the original grant, we authored it for $8 million to start to do what we're doing right here. We took the devices away. We thought, how can we provide remedy for our students that ultimately is this long-term investment? So when we got our 1.4, we were a little disappointed, but we were excited to know that it was one of the largest in the state of Indiana. So then the discussion turned to, how do we spread this 1.4 as far out as we possibly can? See, the advantage for a student right now that can go to their supper table is their teacher is at their supper table and they can communicate in real time. What's the disadvantage is if I'm on the southern end of our district, the northern end of our district, in those desert areas for which there is no broadband. And so what's the next best, if we can't put it at your supper table, can we put it in the parking lot of a firehouse? Can we put it to where it's not a school bus that's you're scheduled a 15-minute pull-up, download, and then that bus moves? So the advantage is that it brings broadband to more students, brings classroom teachers to life as opposed to a downloaded lesson plan that they would review after they downloaded it when a bus came through. It makes the supper table the classroom, and our students need it, and they need it now. Thank you.
Well, it's my understanding that within the Vigo County School Corporation, students can receive certifications for vocational ed. Students can receive preparation for college classes. Students can involve themselves in critical thinking activities, and in 2020, they can learn civics. So it would appear from this one council member who had 31 students hook up yesterday, which is not the number of students that I teach. And so anything that is an investment, whether it's economic development or not, whether it's included in that economic development window, would be a plus in terms of reaching young people and giving those young people an opportunity to be successful. And so thank you very much.
No, thank you. Thank you for the consideration.
Mr. Novermber?
Yes. Councilman Kearns, just had a few, I guess, questions and comments. Obviously, I think this is a great project, and it's clearly much needed. And I take my hat off to everybody that's working on this and everything that's been done behind the scenes thus far. It's very important. A few of the things I had questions was concerning the funding itself. It appears there's $1.4 million grant that the school corporation was able to secure, and then $2 million state grant funds that Joint was able to secure. Is that correct? What is the total project cost?
So we were originally looking at $5 million to take care of the county portion. Josh and his group have split it up between the city and the county, What we're focusing on here tonight is the county's component, that they were able to receive a grant that brought our need to just shy of $3 million. Total project, are you investing about $8 million in the total project?
So the next level connections grant that Joink received, the $2 million you referenced, I just want to make certain that that we're as clear as possible. That was for Joink to service 200 homes in 7 projects across Vigo, Vermilion, and Park County.
Okay.
By winning that grant, it did reduce the amount of construction necessary to reach these locations underneath the GEARS grant. So a component of that $2 million grant that we received is reducing the path footage required for us to hit these community access locations. And so that's why that reference was made earlier. So the GEARS money that the state has awarded to the school corporation covers the subscription fees, the cost for us to provide the service on a monthly basis for a 2-year period, but it does not cover any of the construction cost. And so the purpose of this request is to fund the special construction cost that is not an eligible expense underneath the GEARS grant. And we've allocated that special construction cost across sites that are city sites and sites that are county sites. And this approximate $3 million request is to service the county sites and to fund that special construction cost. The money underneath GEARS then funds the subscription fees necessary on a monthly basis to provide the service.
So the 84 points, are those all in the county?
Those are, well, they are in the county, but some of those
Outside the
84 are
city
more
limits?
specifically in the city, right?
How many are outside the city limits out of the 84?
Stand by. There's approximately 40 sites that are within the city, and the balance are within the county. The county sites are parks, fire departments, community centers, and identified locations that are likely to be very safe locations for students and their families to get online.
So the state funds that you received, in theory, the surrounding counties, would you be able to tap into those locations to hit the outskirts of our county? Is that probably the most
Underneath the
method?
underneath Next Level Connects. Yes, so we actually intend to service a total of 191 community locations. That's our goal, and the GEARS grant is providing the funding for that. So 90 of those access points will be placed across the existing school corporation properties that are owned and maintained by the schools, and the goal is to install this equipment on 107 locations that already have Joink fiber. So the concept is that if you consider one school campus a single property, that would work out to where approximately 130 locations a family can go to get online across the county. And yes, to the extent that there are locations of interest in the adjoining counties where a family might be residing, but their students go to school here, on a case-by-case basis, we can make some site substitutions if those scenarios exist. But we focused exclusively on Vigo County locations that we believe are best suited to service Vigo County students.
Sure. Commissioner Kearns, did you feel comfortable with the $9 million total for edit? Because I didn't know.
No,
Was that
our total
high?
for ed is 2.8.
No, the total funds in our edit fund right
Do
now.
I feel comfortable with that?
Yeah, is that correct? Is that the accurate total at this point that we know?
Yeah, I think Cheryl and I talked earlier today, it's around 9 million, or no, you and I didn't. We talked about something else. I talked to somebody about that, and the number was,
That may
About
be a
9 million.
cash balance, but it's not necessarily the operating balance. You still have existing appropriation that would come out of that.
I asked our auditor if we have the money, and he said yes. So that's how I looked at it. You know, we have money coming in through edit, so we're not just sitting on and pulling away from. But we also have to be aware too of, you know, how COVID's hitting us. Auditor Bramble has assured us that, you know, we're going to be reimbursed for our expenses. So that gives me a level of comfort. Yeah, if I thought this was high risk, I wouldn't be up here.
Is the proposal a one-time fee, or can we finance this, or what are our options?
Josh has presented financing options for us. I think it's in our best interest just to go ahead and do the 2.8 now instead of stretching it out. If it was $7, $8, $9 million, then I think that would be something to look at. But I don't know. I'm leery of financing. He's offering a very good rate, but I'd rather just. I think it's in our best interest if we just cut the check and move it forward, for lack of a better term.
What was the proposed for financing? What was the term? Do we know?
Do you want to discuss that?
So the proposal is that this is a reimbursement. The grant in its entirety is a reimbursement grant, starting with the GEARS grant. And so the concept is that this would be a reimbursement agreement whereby we enter an order with the school corporation to service the sites. As each individual site comes online, we invoice that construction fee to the schools, and then they seek reimbursement back through the county. That's seemingly the cleanest concept at this iteration of the discussion. We had previously discussed a way for these payments to be made to Joint over time, but I think it's cleanest for the school corporation to be the lead agency underneath the GEARS program, for the school corporation to order these services from Joint and have the agreements with the different facilities that are going to allow their facility to be used to service these students, and for Joint to bill the school corporation for the install fee and for the school corporation to be reimbursed by the county. So we are certainly not a lending institution, and while we have access to capital, it's far more expensive than your access to capital. So while there have been lots of brainstorming around this discussion, but I think that design and the concept of a reimbursement agreement is probably the most straightforward approach.
Thank you. One last thing, I promise.
Sure.
So, from what I'm seeing, the proposed commitment from the county is 2.844 million, correct?
773 or something like that.
And then I've read somewhere where the commitment from the city and school corporation is 1 million. Is that correct?
No, I think the city is substantially higher than that. So there's dropped then. Okay, it was higher.
Well, it's not now.
That reflects how much. That really is a reflection of how much joint fiber exists within the city. So we have so much fiber network in the density of the city that these are small little expansions to service what's roughly, from your previous question, 40 out of the 84 sites. Where when we get outside of the city, these are routes that just wouldn't make sense for us to build or any other provider to build. And so that's why for 44 county sites, the dollar amount is so much greater. It's just a much more substantial number of feet in terms of construction.
The deserts are our last communities that we have. I mean, if you look at Fountainette, I like to use Fountainette as an example. 5 years ago, the population was much greater than what it is today. People are leaving because of many reasons, but as Vicki Oster knows back here, we dealt with an issue within the last 2 weeks where lack of service in 911, mainly because of dispatch issues. And cell phones don't work up there. If the cell phones, if we had broadband to this particular person's house, they could have used our text to 911 system and things would have been smoother. But those are the areas that we're focusing on in this project. we need to do what we can to keep Fountainette, Burnett, Lewis, a lot of these outlying areas that people are leaving from. New Goshen, I mean, we have 2 people here in New Goshen. I know your internet is sketchy at best too.
Right.
There's a proprietor that's doing really well in New Goshen right now. I reached out to him, asked him how he's doing with his online component of his business. Well, it doesn't exist because they don't have fast enough internet access. New Goshen, when we look at our outlying communities, is one that probably has the most opportunity for growth because you look at how many people do work on the other side of the state line. As we invest in infrastructure, that's going to make that area more attractive. People are going to move in there, and then that makes that school out there probably less risk of being closed. Whereas right now we've got this big, beautiful school, not a whole lot of kids in it because people have been moving. So that's just another component of this. I know it doesn't have anything to do with your question, but it just came to mind. So, or maybe it does. I don't know. I forgot what you even asked me.
I'm sure you did.
It's been a long 2
So-
days.
Certainly.
Did I say something wrong? Okay, all right.
I just wanted to say that I didn't say in my early comments, you know, we have the opportunity at RGL Solutions to work on grants at the state and federal level on a pretty regular basis. So we work with private entities, municipalities, nonprofit entities, not just in Terre Haute and West Central Indiana, but across the state. I will tell you that one of the things that we need to do to be able to be more aggressive and more competitive in these particular grant opportunities is to showcase the commitment of our state, of our local municipalities on the county and the city level. So I'm excited about this project. I'm excited about what it means now, but I'm also really excited about what it could mean in the future in showing the state and showing the federal government that we are too invested. And so that when we go after these other grants moving forward, we show that our community is invested in broadband and invested in our future. So I just want to share that from a competitive standpoint, this will certainly help our competitive efforts moving forward. So thank you so much.
Okay. You go first this time, Lisa.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry. Could you just clarify? I heard construction costs and those pieces will do things that perhaps will be good for a long time. And then I heard $1.4 million for the cost to provide service for 2 years. Can you just clarify what happens in years 3
Sure.
and beyond?
Sure.
Please, thank you.
1.4 million funds that the school corporation received under GEARS. And Dr. Hayworth, if you'd like to comment or amend my comment, please feel free to. I'm somewhat speaking on their behalf, but those funds provided the capital for the equipment that's being used in the buses and the equipment that is being installed in all of these locations, as well as the 2 years of service fees and the associated installation on the access points that are installed on their buildings. So it's important to realize that the breakdown of the 191 access points, for lack of a better term, 90 are going on 30 school corporation buildings. So there was funding for that equipment and the cable runs and termination inside of those 30 school corporation properties. And then the installation of 107 access points, the associated cable and installation, in those 107 locations where we already have joint fiber. And then these 84 locations, the access points in those locations. So, and then 2 years of service fees. There is not a plan for what happens after 2 years. My hope would be that this is an amazing success and that we're able to get additional funds to continue that service in those locations after 2 years. The fiber is certainly going to be there. The installation has been completed. The access point is online, but the limitation of the GEARS grant was a 2-year limit.
So in order to keep this service running after years 1 and 2, who exactly are we potentially committing to pay the service fees beyond that?
Certainly hasn't been identified. So we're either going to be asking Joint to make those services available after years 2, or we're going to be seeking other grant funds to keep that service in place. I believe that we will have enough data and usability and enough access to various funding sources that can be addressed. But there is not a plan, and the GEARS program was intentionally designed to be a 2-year service.
And the chance that the county would have to step up 2 years from now is what?
We would need to answer that collectively. I'm not comfortable answering that question by myself. From a service provider perspective, we would do everything possible to make sure that we're continuing service. That would be our goal. We certainly are committed to this, but our focus at this point has been compliance with the GEARS grant and the GEARS program rules, and that was a prepaid 2-year service period is what was eligible underneath that grant.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Schweitzer.
Okay, quickly, Dr. Hayworth, you might want to close your ears on this one, but, yeah, no such thing. So potentially, the rest of this week, Sugar Creek Consolidated is on remote learning. I'll probably have 3 or 4 second graders at my house, not because the parents don't have internet, but because they can't afford it. So I'd also like to bring that up that for these parents, I mean, we are a very poor community. For these parents that can't afford internet, here's an opportunity to get these, you know, I don't want to take advantage of this, but even for a parent that needs to fill out a job application or anything like that, we have an opportunity to capitalize on this. Of the 84 points or however many, Josh, we can build on this in the future post-COVID, right? I mean, once you put these points in, we can almost eliminate these deserts depending on what happens in the future.
That's right. So Joink has a track record of making our network available on a very affordable basis to small and medium businesses that we pass. Okay. So a national fiber provider would be very likely to build to a cell tower, for example. They're going to build as cheap and as fast as they possibly can. Where Joink has historically set handholds at every intersection whenever we pass a business, what would have been a very high installation fee is then a $0 installation fee for that business later. And so you have my commitment that this asset will be made available to the businesses that we pass and hopefully eventually to single-family homes. There are other grant programs available through the USDA and through other state and federal agencies, as Rachel mentioned earlier, that we'd like to be able to go to and say, Joink has built this asset. It's a function of private capital. It's a function of public capital. These various grants that we've received, support from the county. We now want to take fiber all the way into these homes or into this housing complex. And that would be our long-term goal. We will continue to expand this network as much as is practical. And we've demonstrated that. We had 0 miles of fiber in the ground in 2015, and we have hundreds and hundreds of miles in the ground now, and we make it available on very reasonable terms to anybody who wants to be connected.
Okay, and my final question is, and I may be too early to ask this question, but is this a service that's going to be offered 24/7, or is this something that's going to be timed or delayed, or?
My expectation is that a student can open their Chromebook and they can get online at any one of these locations at any time, in the same way that they would if they were sitting in a classroom. I suppose it's possible that some of the locations that allow us to place the equipment at their premise may have a limitation on those hours, but I think that will be on a case-by-case basis and relatively infrequent. That's one of the reasons we've prioritized fire stations, police stations, things like that.
Okay. Well, Rachel, I thank you and your team for this, and then Josh, Brendan, John, Tanya, Dr. Hayworth. Here we are again with this step in the future. If we can make a big move here and make something happen. So thank you.
For clarification, or just to add on to your thing, Councilman Schweitzer, the system that will be provided through the school corporation is not a free-for-all service. There will be filters, there will be restrictions in place, whereas what we would have with our own private service as our residences, there will be restrictions on what they can do.
Sure.
Councilman Morris,
Yes.
would you like for me to answer a question that was asked earlier?
On the edit?
Yes, I believe I gave the information to Councilman Loudermilk.
I'm nervous now. What's the magic number?
Well, if you were to spend all that is appropriated for the remaining of the year, that's only if you'd spend all the remaining along with your, what you would receive in December. Is it little over 6 million?
6.124.
Yeah, would be your cash balance if you spent the remaining appropriations that are left to spend. I'll also remind you that edit has some of your highway projects in it, and you do continue to encumber those numbers. I mean, that's part of that, so I'm not sure that you would spend it all at the end of this year. It would continue to roll on.
So while we were having discussions about this, I mean, we've been working on this probably for 4 or 5 months. One of the things that the Andersons and I kind of agreed to was we've been so aggressive with your help this year on paving roads. We paved approximately 67 miles of roads in Vigo County. We average about 30. Through new innovations, systems, stuff like what Larry showed you earlier, we've been able to be a lot more efficient. Since we have been so aggressive this year, our roads collectively are really in good shape. We could invest more in 2021 on the broadband project, throttle down a little bit on our roads, and then be re-aggressive again in 2022 on our road projects. The county will not we're not going to sacrifice anything to get this done, but we could throttle that investment down a little bit if needed.
Mr.
You don't
Mann?
follow me on the roads.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple of questions from what I've been hearing. Am I hearing correctly that the access points in the city are going to happen regardless of our action? That 544,000 is those access points within the city limits of Terre Haute are going to take place? So the request that's being for us is to reach the people who live in the county part, and we are the county council.
Right.
Okay. Am I also hearing correctly that the request is out of edit and we are to appropriate it to the Vigo County School Corporation? Is that correct? It's not something that we would manage, from what I'm hearing tonight, that it would be written, it would go to the Vigo County School Corporation, and then our responsibility would come to an end. Am I hearing that correctly?
And bill us.
Okay. And then my last question, Mr. President. It's my recall that we appropriated $1.8 million to provide movement along the grade in West Terre Haute through a bridge. So we had a match. We met that match to allow people to walk. We're now being asked to spread information and ideas. And we met that $1.8 million request. This is a $2.8 million request. And this is for the movement of ideas, movement of information. And so please keep in mind that we did appropriate money out of edit for people to move from point A to point B. This is the movement of ideas and information. So thank you, Mr. President.
I have a question. We know what it costs approximately for a mile of pavement.
Sure.
What's it cost for a mile? You said hundreds of thousands per mile.
It's actually pretty similar to the cost of a mile of pavement.
I think mile payments we figured it up one time at 63,000.
Now
What's gone up?
It's about 80,000.
About 80 now.
And it'll be higher for next year.
Yeah. What? So
So I've built approximately 400 miles of fiber at this point, across all kinds of different terrains and site conditions. And I've attended industry conferences since 2004. And people always love to ask, what does it cost to build a mile of fiber?
well, here I am.
And there is no real easy answer to that question. It depends a lot on site conditions. But my long-term average is approaching $20 a foot.
Okay.
And that's a function. If you said that to just a contractor who's used to placing tube in the ground, they'd say, oh my gosh, it doesn't cost nearly that much. But by the time you design it and permit it, place it in the ground, proof it, place the cable, splice the cable together, make the necessary connections, energize the signal, a good approximate average is around $20 a foot. Some sites are closer to 16. I have projects that were $50 a foot. It can vary a lot, but my long-term average is between $18 and $20 a foot, depending on site conditions.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions, council members? So the commissioners are making a request for $2.8 million, match this, to build this project out, not necessarily match it, to build this project out what feel like you've designed and needed. Okay. And you want that request out of edit?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
Would it be the responsible thing to do to assign this to a committee and then ask the council for a special meeting in December, which the second Tuesday would be the 8th?
I believe we're going to have a special meeting for CARES Act anyway.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I would like to have an executive session of the council so we can look at numbers and so forth and see, what we can do with this before we get to the point where we're going to vote on it. We really need to figure out our community crossing money and so forth.
Councilman Wagner, I'm not sure, I'd have to look at statute, but I'm not sure that that would be appropriate for an executive session. There's in the statute, it enumerates certain conditions or certain types of things you can have an executive session for, and I'm not sure if that.
Would it need to go to the budget committee, or where would be the place to put it?
The committee would be fine.
Councilman Mann, what committee do you think might be assigned this to?
Well, in terms of what we're being asked to do, and in terms of the big picture, it would seem annual budget.
Annual budget?
Would be the appropriate place for this to go, in the sense of the use of edit dollars being appropriated already that's been commented, and have a aggregate look at the dollars being appropriated and what is and what has and hasn't been used up to the point of whenever the meeting is.
Okay. That's what I was thinking. So what can we do time frame wise?
Well, I mean, you have to, in order to have a committee meeting, you need to have it posted 48 hours in advance. So you're not going to be able to have a committee meeting until next week because tomorrow's a holiday. So you could schedule a committee meeting
Tuesday?
anytime next week.
Can you do Tuesday?
And
Maybe
then
as
you'd
fast
have
as
to
we
be-
can.
You'd have to be prepared, have an advertisement put together, and plan on a meeting at least 2 weeks after that, which I do not know if the auditor's office is ready for the CARES discussion. That has to be done in December, or November or December as well, before the year end.
So we're talking a few days one way or the other if we wanted to combine meetings for a unscheduled meeting in December.
Correct.
So
Isn't that really putting it pretty far away?
thank you. Yeah.
It'll
can't
still
have
be
it-
in 2020.
You can't have a committee meeting until the following week, then you have to wait how many days after that?
Well, when it's in somewhere, you have to be
2,
advertised 10 days,
4.
and then normally you have to we allow about 4 days we plan on to hit the newspaper. So that's 2 weeks. But we have posting requirements that we
Right.
have to meet.
So
For
are we
both the
putting
committee
ourselves to
meeting
latter
and-
December?
Probably you have to have your meeting before December 10th, maybe, because there's a deadline that we cannot do appropriations after. And I think it's somewhere around December 10th.
Okay.
So they have a deadline that you can't have it after a certain time, and if it was It used to be somewhere around the 10th or 11th, something like that.
Okay, well, for the benefit of everybody here, then, with council that felt it was inevitable, we don't normally have a December meeting. Council thought it was inevitable, we'll have a meeting to try to make the CARES reimbursement work. And so I guess the question is whether we want to have a meeting, 2 meetings or 1 meeting. We can sign this to committee by, what, you say Monday next week?
As long as we post it 48 hours in advance.
Okay, all right.
This is only Tuesday.
So annual budget, so Mr. Schweitzer, Ms. Wager, what day?
Your call.
Whatever makes you happy. Well, I think we'll all make time for it, so.
Yep.
Yeah,
Fast-
certainly. I know we
Fast as
will.
you can, as fast as you can.
So Wednesday next week?
Works for me.
Okay. All right. What time?
9 a.m., Wednesday, 9 a.m.
We need to check on room availability first.
Okay, all right. Subject to room availability. Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Effner, does that work?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right, we may have to adjust the date, but we'll get it. We'll schedule one next weekend. Or
Thank you very
next
much for
week,
the-
sorry.
Thank you very much for your time.
Well,
this
thank you.
evening. I know you have a full agenda, and we all appreciate it.
Did anybody else in the that's shown up here? I mean, we've got a lot of firepower here. Comments, support. You got the senator, the state representative, get your advocacy for it. How you feel about it?
So I will just say from, the state perspective, this grant was reviewed by the Department of Education and by the governor's office, and it was highly regarded. Really a lot of talk about it at the state level, what a great grant it is, the collaboration within our community. So I'm pretty proud of the effort that everyone put forth from the school corporation, Joint, and RJL, and the commissioners, and hopefully you all will agree to join this group. I think there's nothing more important than getting access to broadband for our children. And the state continues to invest in grants like the GEARS grant, like the Next Level Broadband grant. And so I hope you guys will join this group as well. Thank you.
He does this to me all the time.
Thank you.
As an educator and a state representative, this is the moment. This is the moment. There's no excuse not to do this. So on the state level, it is so important. What I've learned in 2 years is it's so important for your community to work together. And so many times people are, the city's doing this and the county's doing this, and the state is looking at this going, well, they can't get their stuff together. So this is your moment, come together, pass it, we'll move on. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Rachel, any more comments? All right. Okay. That's all the questions. You guys got all the people here. If there's anything else. Okay. Thank you very much, people. I appreciate it so much. Yeah, Josh, appreciate it. Got a long history. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. Let's see. Next. Beg your pardon? All right. Reports from standing committees.
Mr. President,
Yes.
if I may real quick, did we have any additional public comment? Did anything come by email or anything along that line?
No.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Reports from standing committees. See none. Reports from select committees. None. Ordinance relating to appropriation. Okay. Annual budget, we have 2 issues. We have the Sugar Creek Fire Protection District and the New Goshen Fire Protection District. Thank you for your patience. This was very important things to do here.
It is.
And understand, council, we're hearing this. To act on these items, we would have to suspend the rules. So, okay, please, President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Other council members, Carol Holbert, representing Sugar Creek Fire Protection District, also New Goshen Fire Protection District. Also like to introduce you to our new treasurer at New Goshen Fire Protection District, Joe Watts. Come on board a few months ago.
Welcome.
He thinks it's a good thing, and we're letting him think that right now. No, we're glad to have him there. As the council knows, and I was filling Joe a little bit, and New Goshen has had some struggles in the past, but we are getting things on track. So we're very fortunate and happy to have Joe on board and continue on. So.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm here tonight. We met with Budget Committee on Thursday, and it seems like every year I'm back to visit with you guys, because as fire departments, seems as if we always have something unusual come up or extenuating, and we submit the budget, but then we always tend to want to overspend or spend in excess of our budget. So we come back to ask the council, because we're binding units, we have to come before you to get the additional appropriations approved. So on Sugar Creek, which we'll just talk briefly about first, the additional appropriation we're requesting there is for $55,000. And that is primarily to just offset the cost that we incurred in a complete renovation of the two fire stations over on the west side, in West Terre Haute and St. Mary's. Those had not been updated for quite some time, and so we did a massive renovation there, modernized them, and they are beautiful and look wonderful. So that appropriation, it is basically to cover that, and then we do, as we usually always do, still have the money, or have the money in reserve. We just did not know we were going to go to this extent when we did the budget before. So, so that's what that particular appropriation is about.
Okay.
Anybody has any questions?
This passed the annual budget committee 3-0 favorable.
Need a motion to.
Do you want, should we hear both and then suspend the rules and then act on each item?
You can do it either way.
Yeah, let's
I mean,
just
you
do
can
them both.
suspend the rules
Do them
now
both.
for the duration of these two
Okay.
Yeah.
items, or you can do it individually.
Okay.
whichever you choose.
I would entertain a motion.
So moved, Mr. President.
Second.
Moved and seconded to
Suspend the rules.
Vicky Wager to suspend the rules. Yes, suspend the rules, and seconded by Mr. Loudermilk. And you want a roll call, or do you want?
Roll call, yeah.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk,
Aye.
Ms. Wager,
Aye.
Mr. Mann,
Aye.
Ms. Bennett,
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, so this has been presented, Sugar Creek Fire Protection District remodeling. Is there any other questions of Carol for this request? Sure.
Can you give us some context? This was $55,000 more that you spent than you anticipated spending? Is that right?
The whole project was about 9 fire stations. So yes, we had, this is in excess of what, we didn't really plan to do a remodel project, but we had some reserve money, and so we decided to. But then with we had some other unforeseen repairs with trucks, and so then our total budget has, we're going to overspend, so that's why we've come back with the additional appropriation. Most of it was attributed to the remodeling that we did. But the money, we have the money, the money is in reserve. So we just have to come back to you because we overspent the budget.
Thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions? I would entertain a motion.
We're just doing, how is it being identified? Is it ROC
2020-21.
20-041? Is that correct? Okay, so I will move that we accept the request by the Sugar Creek Fire Department District in the amount of $55,000 as it appears before us in request to council 20-041.
041.
Okay. Strike request of council 20-041 and add 2020-21.
All right, that's what I've got, 2020-21.
Too many twos and.
Yeah.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Mann, seconded by Mr. Schweitzer. Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Ms. Wager?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Ms. Burnett?
Aye.
Show vote. Resolution passed by 7-0 favorable. Okay, now we have the Negotiation Fire Protection District, item number 2021-22 for additional appropriation. This moved through favorable, 3-0 favorable through committee.
So at Negotiation, what we did, and like I said, you guys are familiar with where Negotiation was about 3 years ago. And so we've worked real hard in the last couple of years to get things, bring things, update things, and get more money into the fire department hands because they were trying to run fire emergency services in that area on a $50,000 budget. So the additional appropriation for Negotiation is $17,000, and that was primarily to put a ventilation system in the fire department and a generator. Those are two things that if you've ever been in a firehouse, are very critical. Ventilation systems, of course, is when the trucks are in there running, and that's a way to keep the exhaust and things air, keep the air clean. The generator, of course, unfortunately in the Midwest we have a lot of trouble with storms and whatnot, and like our homes and stuff, we lose power, we lose them at the fire station. So the generator was also a much needed piece of equipment. So obviously Negotiation is much smaller than Sugar Creek and operating on a small budget, but again, we also at the fire district level have the money in reserve. So it's just a matter of needing the additional approval because we have exceeded the amount of the budget.
Okay. Any questions? No questions, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I move the Negotiation Fire Protection District Additional Appropriation Ordinance 2020-22.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Mann, seconded by Mr. Schweitzer. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Ms. Wager?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Ms. Burnett?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Holbert. I think that's
Thank you, Mr. President,
got it
and all
done.
council members, and again, we look always a joy to work with you guys, and I'm sure we'll see you next year.
Yeah.
And your treasurer did a wonderful job.
Yes, he did. I told him he had to come and look good tonight, so
Wait.
he's done well.
He did it.
Thanks for your guys' efforts. Good job. Okay.
Mr. President, I move to remove the suspension of the rules at this time.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Mann for reinstatement of rules, seconded by Mr. Thompson. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Ms. Wager?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Mr. Mr. Schweitzer,
Aye.
Ms. Burnett.
Aye.
Rules reinstated. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the final reading of the salary ordinances. Salary ordinance 2020-16. Let's see. We want to vote on each one of these individually, correct? Okay. Okay, Mr. Auditor?
You want to, do you have a motion yet?
How what? We don't need to read any of them? Okay.
Okay,
So,
Mr. President?
yes,
If I may,
certainly.
in looking at number 3, general employees, put a lot of thought into this, and I am going to make a motion to amend the salary ordinance for general employees, and I hope I get a second. Currently, I'm looking at letters O and P on page 15, and if you'll just allow me briefly to pass these out. I appreciate your patience.
This is,
I am making this amendment to bring some consistency to longevity. And I am requesting that O be changed to all full-time employees of Vigo County, with the exception of merit officers and elected officials, shall receive longevity pay annually, commencing at the beginning of the calendar year of his or her second year, in the amount of 1.25% of the base rate for their respective 2021 classification, and then I have listed them there. I believe this is consistent with what we're going to see with the merit deputies, in which there is a dollar amount identified. And for each subsequent year of service, they receive longevity pay up to the maximum amount of the numbers from Civilian Poll, LTC, COMOT, PAT, EXE, and SO. By doing so, I do not believe we need letter P, because I'm including dispatchers in this, and that would require Q then to become P, R to become Q, S to become R, and we would not need the tables on page 17.
okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Mann.
Yes.
I do, this is important things, so let's have some. Do we need a second to discuss it?
O. So from O,
We need a second to discuss this. Mr. Mann
Well,
proposed.
You don't need a second to discuss it.
Okay. All right. Okay. So you have
Vote on it.
so we can just you have any council people have questions of Mr. Mann and why wanted to submit this in this manner? Yes, Ms.
Can you help us understand just a little bit more about your rationale for proposing this amendment, please?
Yeah, I was involved in a conversation, and we previously to this, we did not have 2 different methodologies for longevity. And now we are going to have 2 different methodologies for longevity. And it just spurred me thinking that I'm going to propose this to where it's a single formula for longevity. I use the base dollars for each one, consistent with how I interpret the merit deputy. I believe I'm using the same percentage to be computed for the base rate. And so I believe this provides back the opportunity to have some consistency with the different employee groups.
Thank you. And did you calculate the difference between this proposal and what the previously,
Yes.
and what was that, please?
Now, it's always going to be dependent on who is employed and that type of stuff. So my understanding is that the ordinance before us, and the members of the Annual Budget Committee can say I'm accurate or not, is going to cost $700,000 additional dollars. This request is going to take an additional one-time $900,000. So it does move the $700,000 request to $1.6 million. Subsequent then, every year, there will be an additional increase. My math has this being about $250,000 in 2021 dollars, which generally is in the 1% range whenever we're talking about an increase in pay. And so the increase is not being factored in for next year. What is being factored in is the additional expense beyond the $700,000. But I do acknowledge that if this is passed, it will cost more to re-up it than what is currently being proposed.
By $250,000?
After this first year, if I'm, I believe I'm accurate. But I'm not going to sit here and say.
Has anyone else reviewed your proposal to confirm the numbers and the differences that you're talking about?
In terms of the council members?
Or
no. Calissa is knowledgeable of the request, but the idea and the numbers.
And not the auditor's office either?
No.
Confirm?
Now, can you explain one more time, tell me what the advantage of this is, that it...
We have, this year, the 2020 budget, you have one formula being used. With the proposal for 2021, we now have two formulas. All this amendment is doing is providing the council an opportunity to have the same formula used for all employee groups. Now, Councilwoman Spence-Bennett's questions in terms of dollar amounts is a legitimate question. But the formula, if I have typed it out properly, is the same that we see in the other
calculation.
in the other longevity, using similar dollar amounts, and I've used the base rate for each of the 6 classifications that are before us.
And all you did was just put it in here in long form.
Yes. So I do recognize in my calculations, we're looking at $900,000 additional dollars beyond what is before us without this amendment.
Jim, do you have a thought about it?
I haven't had a chance to review it.
Do you have a copy of it?
There should be. Did I not send enough?
Ms. Spence?
Do we have to decide this tonight?
No, you have to decide it before the end of the year.
I'm wondering if we could, forgive me, everybody, but table this, since we're going to have to the Budget Committee too. Since there's a Budget Committee meeting coming up for this other reason, do we want to hold this for more discussion at that Budget Committee meeting with the idea that we might approve in the next special meeting that we're going to have anyway? To get some additional, Councilman Mann, to get some additional eyes on total cost over time?
We can. You have motion on to accept it at this point. Without a second. You can vote on it right now, or you can make a motion to table, and we just have table in the one section, perhaps, for the entirety.
You better like not separate it. Keep it one way or not.
Just keep them all together would be the simple.
Do what, Jimmy?
Keep it all together, I would think would be the simple way.
Well, and okay, any other questions, Mr. Mann? So, on this request, then, is there a second to the motion that Mr. Mann made? Hearing no second, I say the motion dies at this point. So, are there any other motions?
I move to table this salary ordinance for discussion by the Budget Committee in their upcoming meeting and review by the council in our special meeting.
Okay. Is that clear? Okay, Bob?
Oh, I think I'm just talking about the general employee one. Sorry.
So motion to table,
To separate it out, Lisa, is that what you're talking about? To separate this one.
The whole ordinance, it was what I'm referring to, so that there can be full review of the calculations and the cost impact. So it would be the full general employee salary ordinance to table that one for tonight.
okay. More questions, Ms. Wager?
No.
Okay. Is there a second to table?
I will second.
We have motion to table, and we have second. Any other discussion? Mr. Auditor, roll call vote.
Mr. Morris,
Nay.
Mr. Thompson,
Nay.
Mr. Loudermilk,
Nay.
Ms. Wager,
Nay.
Mr. Mann,
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer,
Nay.
Ms. Bennett.
Aye.
Okay, reflect the motion to table is denied 5-2. Okay. Now moving on to the salary ordinance as presented then. And thank you very much, Mr. Mann. Appreciate that effort.
You're welcome.
Excuse me, Mr. Morse.
Yes.
You may want to go through and do the salary ordinance 2020-16 and 2020-17 before you do the 21 general employee merit officers and elected officials.
Okay.
The 2020-16 is
Twen-
for changes made for positions and compensation for the lit PSAP fund. And then the 2020-17 are changes made, personnel changes made in the general fund, county general fund.
What page are we gonna be on?
It is page, right there, page 8.
Okay.
This right here. That adds 2 positions that went through the budget committee. That's what you put in your budget. Yes, we jumped ahead to 3, skipped 1 and 2.
Oh, that's a big deal.
Okay, so the final reading and/or adoption at your pleasure. Salary ordinance 2020-16, which is the personnel changes made in the 2021 budget on page 8 of our agenda book. Okay. All right.
In the 2021 budget, there was included 2 dispatcher positions at civilian pool B. The positions are already in existence, so it's not necessary to approve a job description, a title, but it is important to establish you're approving 2 more positions. And then also there's an assistant director position that was included in the budget. This is a new position, and so it's necessary to approve the title, approve the job description, and the classification at exec A.
So is this ordinance as written, does it need to be amended?
Well, I mean, that's up to you if you want to amend it, but that's how it was put in the 2021 budget. And if you look at page 56, that has the memo and the job description, the memo that gives the recommendation for classification, and also the job description that was prepared by WIS based on information provided by Vicki Oster, and Vicki did review the job description after we received it from WIS, and she was okay with that.
All right. Again, we vote on 2 positions. Approved the job description, classification, and pay scale, all in one item here, correct or not correct?
If you're okay with everything on there, you can do it all in one.
Okay. Councilman Loudermilk, you've been working on this pretty diligently. Does this look good?
That's great.
And this doesn't have to come through personnel?
It already has.
It already
went
has.
through personnel and budget
Back
committee.
in June?
Yeah, but this is what,
Okay.
it was recommended through the personnel committee, went through the budget committee, and this spells it all out. I know that last year there was some confusion because we didn't have details like this. It was put in a salary ordinance that lasts, 20 pages? And things got lost, and maybe some of you were not aware of things that happened. So puts this back in where everything's detailed out.
Okay. Okay, other questions? All right, I would entertain a motion.
Move to accept salary ordinance 2020-16 as presented.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Loudermilk, seconded by Mr. Schweitzer. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Ms. Swager?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Ms. Burnett?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. There was quite a bit of work that went into that, and I think that helped our 911 system dispatch. Okay, next item would be the salary ordinance 2020-17, general.
Yes, this impacts the changes that were made in the county general fund.
Okay,
You have multiple, 4 positions in the juvenile center that went from a detention officer, civilian pool A, and amend title to corporal, and amend the classification to civilian pool B. You had 4 shift supervisors in juvenile center that are currently civilian pool B to amend the classification as civilian pool C, and a senior supervisor, civilian pool D, to amend the compensation to add a $500 stipend. In the jail, a correctional officer, civilian pool A, amended to a sergeant and amend the classification to civilian pool C. Sheriff's Department, courthouse security, civilian pool A, 1 position, amend the title to courthouse security sergeant, amend the classification to civilian pool C. Information services, a network technician, Pat A, 1 position, amend the title to network administrator, amend the classification to Pat B. we left out, we're gonna have to add that in there. Sorry, we were missing a part on legal secretary. We are adding a position, so we're gonna have to add in add a position. It is a comment C. And it has an existing job description and, classification, so that's good. And then chief public defender amended to a full-time position and improve the compensation for the state schedule. And these are all effective January 1, 2021.
Okay, all these things have been discussed at some length, I think. Some of them are minor adjustments, some a little not so minor. Public defenders recommended by the state, that didn't get, actually that was something we looked at last year, did get done last year. So any other questions about these things or changes or corrections or anything?
So, Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. Mann.
How does the blank information then on page 10 impact this vote? Will the legal secretary come back before us at our next meeting then?
You can amend it to add add 1, parentheses 1, position, comma, comment C, and I believe up $20.65 per hour.
So we need an amendment on the legal secretary. Okay. No suspension of rules or anything, just a straight amendment.
Correct.
Okay. So I would entertain a motion to amend the salary ordinance 2020-17.
Calissa, what's the verbiage on it? Amend to add comment C?
Add 1 position, comment C, it's $20.65 per hour.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Ms. Weiger, seconded by Mr. Thompson. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Ms. Wager?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Okay, motion passed. All right. Amendment passed. Okay, I would entertain a motion to accept salary ordinance 2020-17 as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Wager, seconded by Mr. Thompson. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Ms. Wager?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. Good work. General employees compensation schedule. Again, let's move forward, favorable 3-0. Was that in 17, the whole thing?
Pardon me?
I don't have an item number for general employees, merit officers, and elected
Oh,
officials.
It doesn't have it, it's just the 2021 salary ordinance.
Just the 2021 salary ordinance for general employees. I don't need a number.
No,
Okay.
What page?
page 12.
Thank you.
Is that what you asked, or somebody else?
Mr. President,
Yes.
I make a motion to accept the salary ordinance for general employees as presented.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Loudermilk, seconded by Ms. Wager. Any other comment?
I have a question.
Yes.
Was the proposal to cover the cost of the insurance billing clerk for the health department after their grant runs out covered as part of this proposal in the original budget discussion?
No.
No. So there was a different place where that was considered.
It's in the grant, but there's nothing put in place for when the grant runs out.
Right.
Or
So
if it runs out.
So there was a request that came through the Personnel Committee that was approved 3-0 to cover the cost of this position after the grant runs out, I believe. And I guess my expectation is that that would have gone to the Budget Committee, but I don't think it's here. So my question is, is this the ordinance under which that would have been proposed and covered?
I don't think.
Yes, it is the ordinance that it would have been covered if it were passed. Now, by the
Right.
committee.
Right, so,
I'm fairly certain that in the Personnel Committee, everything was contingent on funding, and it was sent to the Budget Committee contingent on funding with a favorable recommendation.
oh, I understand that.
And the Budget Committee reviewed them, and that is one that was denied by the Budget.
So do we have any recollection or notes from the Budget Committee as to how they considered this position and why it didn't get approved for inclusion under this salary ordinance?
I do not have any notes on that. I have the notes on the meeting, the vote on it, and maybe the date. That's all I have with me right now.
Does anybody from the Budget Committee remember why this proposal was not approved by the Budget Committee?
I don't remember that at all.
It was my understanding that they were going to wait for the grant to find out what actually happened with the grant.
Okay, so pending potential, well, I guess my recollection from the Personnel Committee discussion was that the grant was originally provided or funded by the state because our vaccination levels were so low. And now that we've improved them using the money provided by the grant, there's little chance that the grant would be, we've kind of worked ourselves out of that grant funding because we've done such a good job of making that improvement. Because we were almost last, I think, in our vaccination rates when we started, and we're close to the state average now. So I was wondering, so presumably there's a really good chance that this won't be covered by the grant. So I was wanting to bring up the possibility of amending the salary ordinance to cover the insurance billing clerk after June of next year to ensure that that good practice and those results continue for the county.
It was not included in the budget. I mean, if that's something that once they have a better handle on what's going on with the grant and they know for sure that if it's denied or it's not going to be. And then they can bring a request forward to the council and for it to be effective July 1, because I believe the grant, does it run out June 30th?
I think June 30th, right. Okay.
I mean, that's a possibility, but as of now, it's not in there for funding at the local level.
Okay, so the recommendation to be, if I were to speak to the health department about this, the recommendation would be to wait and see what happens and bring it up as soon as they're pretty sure or certain that the grant is not going to be funded.
That's exactly what I told Joni Wise. She called me about that, and I think our standard operating procedure is on grants. If they run out, we would most certainly fund it. But, and I told her, if you don't get it funded, then we'll, come back and we'll go.
Okay, asking my colleague from personnel, are we satisfied with that? Because we approved it through, again, pending budget. Are we satisfied with that approach in the health department?
Yeah, I think we've had a similar situation with them before that we handled in that manner, if I remember correctly.
And just, all they have to do is just come back, and if they're not gonna get it, we would never let the, as an immunization person, as I recall, and I said, we're never gonna let them go down the pipes. Sure.
Okay.
Well, the other thing is that the salary ordinance does not really address partial year employees.
Okay.
So it gets really messy to try to put one in there and say it's only good
Oh, this one's half.
July
Okay.
1.
Okay.
Because once you put it in there, there's nothing that stops it until the funding runs out.
Right.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to ask about that,
Yeah.
and I hear you. So, okay, thank you very much for that discussion.
Okay. Any other questions on the salary ordinance? I would, let's see, we take a motion already? Seconded, right, okay. All right. Mr. Auditor, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Ms. Swager?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Ms. Burnett?
Aye.
Okay. Pass 7-0. All right. General employees, on to merit officers on page 13.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I move to accept the salary ordinance for merit officers as presented.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Loudermilk, seconded by Mr. Thompson. Discussion? I would entertain a motion.
They made the motion.
What? Oh, sorry. I mean, okay, roll call vote, pardon me.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Ms. Swager?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Ms. Burnett?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
All right, pardon me, people. Okay, elected officials for our final item here. I believe we had a reduction to council members of about 20% or something.
Yeah, there's one that did say.
Is there a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Wager, seconded by Mr. Thompson. Any other discussion? Roll call vote.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Ms. Swager?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Ms. Burnett?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Okay. I believe that concludes the annual budget committee. Thank you. Mr. Thompson, we have budget adjustment.
Resolution of reallocation of existing appropriation 2020-09, ROC 20-037, Juvenile Justice Center.
Mr. President, members of the council, Norm Lauder, Executive Director, Juvenile Center. I survived. Last time I spoke with you guys, I was pretty sick, but, we were able to survive COVID, so good. This is a request for a transfer of money from the food line item into, I think it's repair buildings. Where's that? Yeah. What we're going to do is, as many of you know from all of the trips you've made over there and some of the things we want to do, the floor to the Juvenile Center has become, it's in disrepair and needs to be completely ground out and resurfaced, and so it's becoming a health hazard, especially with COVID. We can't disinfect the way we need to. And so it's not been redone since the building was built some 20-some years ago. So we're going to be doing a kind of a flake system like this. I didn't bring a copy for everybody, but like you'd see like on a garage floor, 3-coat type system, epoxy that's sealed, and it flakes. Number one, it'll hide the dirt because there's a lot of scuff marks in that light gray paint that's over there. So we're going to be able to hide things. It's going to be a black and gray and white kind of blend, so it'll hide marks a little bit better. I think it'll make it look a lot nicer. And so, this transfer of revenue will take care of that. There was some discussion in the committee meeting about if we take money from the food line item, will we have enough money left over to be able to fund meals for the kids? And without question, we will. In the non-reverting food line item, which is a repayment, a reimbursement of money we get for breakfast, lunch, and then the snack after school, we get reimbursed from the state. So we pay $3.85. That's what it costs for that breakfast. We pay actually $1.59. $2.26 is reimbursed from the state. So the average cost for us for the month of October was about $3,500 that we paid for the food, and we get reimbursed about $2,100. So we were able to apply for funding through the state. It's not a grant, but funding through the state allows us to be able to recoup some of that money in the daytime. We have to pay full price for the evening snack and for dinner, but the lunch, the morning snack, and breakfast is all paid, well, partially paid for by the Department of Education. So, if we have $50,000-ish in that food line item right now, take away $30,000 for the floors that we want to do, that still leaves a $20,000 balance in that line item, or that account, that budgeted account. That's from the general fund. And then a non-reverting, lunch reimbursement program, we have $13,000 in there. So given that we only spend about $3,500 a month, we're a couple months behind, so we'll travel into next year, but we have more than enough money to cover the food for the detainees. So there should be no concern from the council that we will run out of food or we'll be short. Plenty of revenue in there to do that. As a matter of fact, if I would have really studied this and hadn't been sick, I would have probably asked for 40,000 transfer instead of 30, just to help make sure if there was some problem that popped up during the job, that we'd be able to cover it. So happy to answer any questions you may have.
Question. I think there was some question in the committee meeting. Sorry, can you hear me?
No, that's fine. I can
I
read
think
your
there was
list
some
now.
question in the committee meeting about a bill from Canteen that we may have been waiting on.
Yep.
Did you get that figured out?
Well, I did. What happened was it was a, so I'm going to turn this over to Andrea. She's my compliance manager. She explained it to me, but I'm sure I'm going to mess it up. So I'm going to let her tell you about it.
Okay, so what happened was the sheriff's department did not bill us for December 8th of 2019 up until March 20th of 2020. And I contacted the auditor's office and said, look, can you get a hold of the sheriff's department because we have not been billed for that. They did bill us for that. If you'll look on our ledger, it's a $16,000 bill. We were billed for it. You guys were looking at the ledger of the food line item. We also have the non-reverting lunch item too. That still we were billed $16,000, and we still have $13,000 in there. And this is a reimbursable. So I just filed a claim for October, which will be reimbursed $2,078. Then I'll file a claim for November, will be reimbursed, and I'll file one for December, so on and so forth.
And this happened because a person retired at the sheriff's department that normally handled that. And when they retired, Nancy Roberts, when she retired, the next person stepped in, didn't realize that we were supposed to pay that. And so the bills just kind of added up. And then I didn't come into the position until, February. And then we didn't, you add another month and then some confusion. But once we got the bill, it was paid for out of the non-reverting account side.
Yes. And the
It's in
reason,
ledgers we could look at too.
and the reason it was is because the Department of Education, which does the non-reverting lunch fund, contacted me at the end of the year last year and said, you know, you have quite a bit of money in there. So when I did get that bill for $16,000, I just paid the whole bill out of the non-reverting lunch fund.
I think that was the only concern in the council, or in the committee meeting, correct?
Say again?
That was the only concern in the committee meeting.
Well, I think there were some concerns about the payroll stuff, but we addressed
got
that, but that was the only thing. I think the main concern from the committee was, if I'm not mistaken, was there gonna be enough left in there to be able to handle food for the rest of the year?
Okay.
And because I don't think, like Calista had said, she didn't see any payments from the ledger for the first 5 months of the year, it looked like, uh-oh, what are we doing? Well, the other ledger showed the big payment.
This passed committee favorably 3-0.
Okay. Any other questions of Juvenile Director? I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Wager, seconded by Mr. Thompson. Any more discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Ms. Wager?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Ms. Burnett?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you very much, and we won't see you again this year, so have a happy Thanksgiving and Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Okay.
The next one, additional appropriation ordinance 2020-19, ROC 20-038, lit PSAP. I think this was from a clerical error, is that
Yes,
right?
There was a technical correction. There was a number transposed when entering the budget.
This passed committee favorably 3-0 as well.
Okay. Technical correction, okay. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Loudermilk, second by Mr. Schweitzer. Any other comment? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Ms. Wager?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Ms. Burnett?
Aye.
Okay, moves ahead, or passes favorably 7-0.
Additional appropriation ordinance 2020-20, ROC 20-039, Veterans Court. This passed committee favorably 3-0 as well.
Okay. I see we have Veterans Court Administrator, Chief Judge of that court. Any questions? Got that.
Easiest thing you're gonna do all night.
That's why we saved you for almost last.
Huh?
That's why we saved you for last
I'm
almost.
gonna have to get some more important issues so I get up on the agenda.
Yeah. This is important to us.
I know.
Very good job.
Council President Morris, I'll make a motion to approve additional appropriation 2020-20.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Schweitzer, seconded by Ms. Burnett. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Ms. Wager?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Ms. Burnett?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Thank you for your attendance. We appreciate it. We really do.
We only want to say we just want to keep you here because it makes the place so classy when you're here.
I'll get you that drink.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Resolution of reallocation of existing appropriation 2020-10, ROC 20-040, Veterans Assistant Officer. This passed committee 3-0 favorably.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Right.
We have representation here, Mr. Morris, if you want to allow him to speak.
Go ahead and
Oh.
introduce yourself.
Oh,
Hi, my name's Tim Cunningham. I'm the new Veteran Service Officer for Vigo County. I've been here about 4 months. I hope we've made some very good strides in the short time that I've been here, and we will strive to continue that effort. So what we were looking to do, we got a bill for printer ink, and we didn't have enough money in the one account. We had the money in a different account. We just wanted to switch it over so we could access it. That's
Okay. Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Schweitzer. I was busy reading my notes here.
Keep you on your toes.
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Loudermilk, seconded by Ms. Wager. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Ms. Wager?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Thank you so much for your patience.
not a problem. Thank
And
you very
thanks for
much.
your service and happy Veterans Day.
Well, thank you.
Mr. President,
Yes.
is it possible to learn the status of salary ordinance 2020-15? It's a general fund request for the Title 4D court reporter. We heard a few months ago and it was tabled.
Okay. That'll be,
Judge Adler was here making a request.
oh, yeah.
And that request was tabled, and I just didn't know if we had any update on that salary ordinance, 2020-15.
We didn't address it in the total salary ordinance. Didn't change anything.
No, committee didn't change anything.
We didn't.
I did talk to Judge Adler about it, and when she learned that she was getting her longevity and the 3% for this coming year, she was quite pleased. So I think that they've resolved their fit of concern.
Okay. Would we want to bring that item back up then and vote on it to clear the decks here? We tabled it?
I don't think you need to.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. Good memory. Yeah, I think that Vicki did do some work on that. I remember that now. Okay. That concludes budget adjustment. Any other ordinance or resolutions? I don't know of any. Honorary resolutions. Resolutions relating to physical policies of council. Okay, first reading of summary reference of proposed ordinance and resolutions. We need to set that budget meeting
Well, we
and
can.
set the December meeting.
Like, I have to check on room availability. I know you tentatively said.
Can we leave it open-ended?
Right now, you've set it tentatively for Wednesday, November 18th at 9 a.m.
Yes.
CIB. But I can check on room availability and I can work with,
Yeah, we can use commissioners or other commissioner.
Okay.
we can look at, can work with the committee members. Yeah, the auditor can't be two places. The auditor can't be two places.
I
at
bet
once.
you could if you tried.
We don't have to set the committee date right now, but we can work on that too.
For the December meeting for the whole council?
No, because you
No.
can call that
Okay.
at a later
All right.
date, so once.
Well, that's gonna work on,
Because we have to we have to determine when you can do the committee meeting, and the other is there's a big question if the auditor's office is ready to move forward with
Right.
repairs, because does that
Right.
need to happen in 2020? But do you have that mapped out? Okay, so is it possible you could have that by, if we have a meeting next Wednesday, is it possible you could have it by then? When do you think you, I mean, I guess that's,
If we're gonna handle both items at one additional call, it doesn't make any difference when we have the committee meeting.
no.
You
Other than you
have
need
it-
to have it prior to, I mean, you have to have it, you have to know what to advertise
Right.
when, for the council meeting. I mean, yes, you can,
We could have that budget sooner than Wednesday.
well, yeah,
We probably wish we did if we don't.
I mean, not if, I guess it depends on whether the budget committee wants to act upon what the CARES Act is.
We're gonna have to act on it, or we're gonna take and
If you want- if
suspend the
you wanna
rules
go-
and act on the CARES at two separate items if we have a additional appropriation for,
And you can do that as well. It just depends on how much time you want ahead of time.
the CARES, it seems like it would be pretty straightforward. Yeah, that's what we're talking about, I think.
You don't want it to go to budget, that's fine. Your budget committee.
Would it require suspension of the rules?
Since it didn't go through committee, I would say yes.
That would require 7-0 vote.
Yep.
Go through committee,
Right.
4.
Well, I don't anticipate any problem with what we're looking at is,
I'm just
yeah,
saying.
I know, exactly.
The threshold is higher.
You have 7-0 vote unanimous to suspend, and I think you have to have majority if it's suspended.
I don't think anybody's gonna turn down dollar we get out of that. $3 million that's allocated, if we can get any reimbursement.
I would not anticipate.
So, okay, and, yes,
So the puzzle is, this COVID virus doesn't stop December 31st. So you will be appropriating the money that you've spent for COVID-related expenses for this year. But then very quickly after next year, you're going to have authorization to continue these tracers and other COVID-related things into the, following year. So those expenses weren't anticipated in the budget you just passed, so you'll have a whopping big additional real early in the year. Mhm. Mhm. Part of it.
Will you have to make a determination on all of the COVID expenses that were turned into you that you're not asking for reimbursement because you're doing the reimbursement through payroll?
Right.
But some of those may not have to be reappropriated. I mean, they may be able to
They
use
may
their
be.
existing, because when the initial guidance went out, it's like, if it's COVID related, mark it COVID and turn it in and we'll keep track. That doesn't necessarily mean they didn't have the appropriation to cover it in their budget. So how are you gonna deal with that?
It's a mess.
Okay. I can go on record that the one that we turned in for our budget, we don't need it reappropriated.
Okay.
My $149.
The problem is they keep changing the
So are
rules
we
on-
going to have to even act on it this year?
Yeah, well, I think we've got some overdrawn appropriations that need to be covered.
Okay.
Yeah, and the kicker here is that last memo that came out from the Board of Accounts on how to claim the salaries, the last line in it was that this is subject to change. So I hope we get it done before they change their mind again.
Okay. So annual budget committed to consider additional appropriation for
COVID.
For the
Grant match?
grant match
Well, it's not a grant match, I guess, but
Yeah.
the broadband project.
for the broadband project. So, as requested by the commissioners, so consideration of that. Okay, again, we're back to it. Date time. Wednesday, not Wednesday, because auditor can't be there. What date can't? Okay,
How about I check schedules and I can get with you
all
tomorrow?
right, all right, Vicky, Chris, okay.
I'm sorry, Thursday. We're not here tomorrow.
Thursday?
No.
Yeah,
It's veteran. It's a holiday. We're not here.
I'll be here. Shouldn't take too long. Okay.
And do we have an anticipated date for a council meeting to address the CARES Act and the broadband items?
No, there's not one, but I think it would be within your best interest to avoid any conflict with the DLGF schedule to maybe wrap it up by December 10th at the latest, at the very latest.
So we'll shoot for let's just shoot for the December 8th date. It's the second Tuesday like we always do.
Okay. So we're going to have it December 24th.
What? I'm not gonna be here.
Will you be here on the 26th?
Nope. I'm just going on record.
What do we
6
think?
p.m.
What are we thinking? Somewhere in the teens or somewhere? I mean,
6 p.m. on the 8th. Is that the request?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
6 p.m. on the 8th. Okay. All right. Let's go from there, subject to change.
Do it at 5.
All right. Anything else we need to schedule then?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay. All in favor, by aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, people.
If there's a conflict, I'll let you know. Turn your mics off. Mics off.